everyone. You're with Property Mythbusters. I'm Debra Beck-Mewing from Crave Property Advisory.
I'm Ken from Avvora Finance.
And I'm Gilmovich from Real Property Manager. And
today we're talking about the myth that using Airbnb is better than normal renting practices.
Well, this is a big topic. A lot to cover. And how appropriate that this is our final episode for 2019 as we head to holiday season, festive season. There are investors who are wanting to discuss holiday lettings or short-term letting accommodation.
Yeah, so I'm sure there'll be some people who are, travelling to a holiday location thinking, wow, I'll be able to pick up this property for, a couple of $100,000 and just put it on Airbnb, make it easy, right?
Yeah, it sounds terrific, right? Sounds great. Airbnb is a platform. There are probably 5 or 6 platforms out there to host short-term lettings. And I guess the lure of it is for investors that, the holiday letting industry in Australia, it's about a $53 billion industry.
Wow.
That's pretty sizable.
That's what it's been estimated at. And 34% of it is coming out of New South Wales, and in particular Sydney.
Really?
Yeah, 34% of the market is in Sydney right now, doing short-term lettings. And
but you were saying there's a few changes coming in.
Yeah, so it evolved and started probably about 5 or 6 years ago commercially, where you could start hosting, as they say. So you're a host or the property owner, or possibly the lessee as well, because there are actually business owners out there that run short-term lettings as tenants. So they make an arrangement and sign a lease with the landlord, and the landlord gives them consent to basically run short-term lettings out of those properties as well. And when it all started, there was no rules, there was no regulations. It was a new thing. It's a new industry, and it's an old industry that's been revamped and modernised using modern platforms. So and it's become easier. It's become easier to be a host and run a business because of online technology and the platforms. So originally, in the last few years, it's been nice and easy. There's no rules or regulations. You can pretty much do as you want and make an income. Fast track all of that to 2019, and there's a few dark clouds coming in this industry, because New South Wales government in particular has caught on to the fact that there's all these people making money and they're not paying tax. So we've got this issue with what they call the black economy. All these people making money, nobody's really tracking them. How does New South Wales government play a part in all this? And how, of course, the ATO, the Taxation Office, plugs into this, which they're going to do because they just announced it 2 months ago, that they are actually going to start doing data matching on hosts. So what does that mean? All of a sudden, they're plugging in, like many years ago they did with eBay, where people were running businesses and not hobbies, and the ATO caught on the fact and plugged in to the platform and started collecting their taxes. So next year, what's happening is we've got a rules of conduct
in 2020.
Coming in 2020.
Yeah.
We've got legislation, which is called the Short-Term Residential Holiday Letting Legislation, or the Act. And we've got the Australian Taxation Office plugging into those platforms and data matching and catching out those hosts that at this stage are not declaring or flying under the radar.
Yeah. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
A lot of changes.
Well, for some.
Yeah.
For some, they'll be pretty fearful.
So basically, the Airbnb landscape is changing. And so our myth that it's better than normal renting practices, well, it might have been better for some. Now it's going to get even more challenging. So let's take a different tack and talk to Ken. So can you give us your opinion on, Airbnb in the whole finance landscape?
Sure. So just when applying for a loan application, I guess the idea is to get as much income included in the assessment, helps strengthen the financial position. It's looked more favourably upon for approval by the lender, and allows you to increase your borrowing capacity. So I think at the moment, when we were covering this topic, I did some research, and generally speaking, Airbnb properties aren't really looked favourably upon. Some lenders have kind of put it under holiday rental homes and things like that. So one of them gave 65% of that income. From what I can tell, most of them just want to see a 12-month history of that property being leased out, just to cover seasonal influxes of the demand for the property. But I think one thing as well with a lot of things, because with lenders they do kind of adapt and change and update their credit policies a lot of the times behind the scenes. We just get flooded with emails in terms of what one of the major banks are doing or what. So they're always tweaking, and I think sometimes regulation does help with increasing the reliability, the credibility of that source of income. So if it does become regulated, and there's good transparency in terms of being able to confirm and verify those figures, it may become something which more lenders kind of look towards as a reliable source of income, and then that can be then dovetailed into having more lenders accept that rental income. So it could be a bad thing in terms of like the regulation, but there could be some benefits out of it. But at the moment, no, the finance is a little bit hard. It's a little tricky.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, Deborah, why don't we have a look at the pros and cons?
Yeah.
Between long-term residential lettings, as we know, the residential tenancy agreements that we sign, and doing short-term holiday lets.
So as a strategy, property strategy, is it better or not? Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the risks potentially coming up in this space. So
the bad stuff.
The bad stuff. Let's look at the bad stuff first. So from what I know, short-term letting hosts are going to be treated put into two categories: owner-occupiers and absentee owners or the investors. And in particular, this will tie into strata schemes as well. So the Residential Tenancy Act, the Short-Term Holiday Letting Act will not restrict owner-occupiers. So if you're owner of your own home and you wish to either let out rooms in your own home, or you are in fact going on holidays yourself for a couple of weeks, you're going overseas for a month or whatever it may be.
A couple of months.
You're completely unrestricted. Take 6 months off, Deborah, because you've done so well.
Okay,
good.
It's
nice.
In Italy.
You're unrestricted, and you can short-term your property as much as you like. However, if you're a property investor that's an absentee owner in what they call the Greater Sydney geographical area, which really is CBD out to about the Central Coast.
And all the way down to probably Wollongong.
And down to the you are in fact going to be restricted to a maximum of 180 days letting. Now that's not explained as at this stage consecutive days. It's a total number of 180 days that you're allowed to host your property on any of the short-term letting sites. What else is there? There's going to be an open register. So if you're a host, a real estate agent involved, or a property manager, or Airbnb property manager, you have to register your property, which will be online, probably an office or fair trading type platform, and you will be monitored, probably have to pay a fee of some sort as well.
So could you slide around that? Not really. Because if you're advertising on not only Airbnb but any one of the other platforms.
So
you're gonna have to
this is
probably
be out
make
there.
it part of the onboarding process or something.
Yeah,
like that, where they have to register.
they have
and
to
then
register.
provide it.
or it's probably
That makes
deemed
sense.
as almost an illegal operation if you're not registered. Kind of similar to
boarding houses.
houses. So if you're not registered, you're technically put in the illegal category. Okay.
That's
The
not
other
good.
kicker on that front as well, this is how serious this is the penalties. So there's actually a 2-strike rule for breaching any of the code of conduct of the short-term holiday lettings, and the penalties are for corporations up to $1.1 million
Yep.
for corporations. So if you're running, for example, a trust
In a company structure.
in a company structure, or
That's a
it's your superannuation,
Mm.
or you're a PTY, that's considered a corporation.
Yeah.
Up to $1.1 million breach
Per
fines.
incident. Yeah.
For individuals, it's up to $220,000.
Yeah. I doubt any Airbnb rental is really going to cover that.
That's pretty frightening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so some of the other cons, I think, that generally it can be pretty risky. You've got all the inherent risks of that short-term rental.
Yes.
Property damage, talking about.
Yeah, property damage.
Yeah. There's already publicly, media's caught on to the fact that there's been some incidents inside of some of these short-term letting properties, including parties, personal injuries, disrespect of the property, in particular inside of strata. There's been fires, there's been people fall off balconies, breach of security, and inside of strata, in particular strata living, disrespect of common areas like swimming pools and gyms and even hallways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is that side of it. The other side of it is that it is a lot of work. So
It is.
you're constantly having to keep things at an absolute supremely clean environment. And the other thing that people don't talk about is the fact that it can take quite a bit of momentum to get your price up, or even really attract a consistent audience. So it's not like you just advertise and the money comes to you.
That's correct. Yeah.
And of course not all property is suitable. So the other issue that you mentioned was insurance, or was it you?
Yeah, insurance.
Yeah, so-
how that kind of comes in with strata, because I recall that the insurance didn't cover Airbnb activities within a unit.
Yeah, but
you
units.
mentioned.
Yeah, so the insurance products are slowly evolving in that space, and I do know there are a couple of products out there to cover you for some of these risks, but it's still early days, and it's not always black and white as far as, well, will they cover me for this incident?
They'll take your money, but will they?
They're happy to take
pay
a
out?
premium, but will they pay out in case of an incident, such as a personal injury, and who's the cause of that, and what came into play? That's the risk.
Yeah.
That's the risk. It's there's no certainty. There's certainly they'll cover you for everything, because at the end of the day, you've placed those occupants into that property, and I doubt that you've screened them as well, because not many are actually screening the occupants,
Really?
even though they say they are. Really, at the end of the day, they're there for short term.
Yeah.
They move on. You get the next person in there. You really are running a business of high turnover, and you can't really knock back that many applicants to the point where you're actually not making enough income from it. So that's one of the challenges. The other challenges, of course, is, do you have the time to do it yourself and run it professionally? Because if you're not running this professionally, what happens is you will have bad ratings.
Yeah.
So each platform has a rating. We all know that, similar to restaurant ratings, similar to other platforms, eBay, and all those, even Uber. So Airbnb and all the other platforms have a rating system. So you could be potentially badly rated, which means that your rankings drop. Your rankings drop, and that means you are nowhere to be found on the listing sites.
So lots of challenges. what's the upside? Like, it's a huge industry, so it's attracting a lot of people. So I guess like the big one is the income.
That's a good income.
So the income can be terrific.
Way above the normal rental market price.
Yeah, sometimes it's even 10 times your weekly income, your weekly rental.
Market rent. Yeah,
and in with seasonality, if you've got a 1-bedroom unit at Potts Point over the Christmas New Year period, you can almost recoup all of your annual rent just in that 1 week when during the fireworks in Sydney.
I guess it allows a little bit more free market, because I mean you wouldn't be able to charge that type of rental amount. That you could kind of get caught up in something if you were to increase the rental amount by that much.
Yes,
through a normal lease.
Yeah. I mean, if you're smart about it, you set it up right, and you're willing to give it, the absolute best shot, you could potentially have a little small business.
Yeah,
there.
Well, a lot of people do. Yeah,
and they do. Some evolve into what they call super hosts. 10, 15 properties on the go at once.
Right.
But that is a full-blown, full-time operation. So who's going to be managing all of that?
Yeah, or you can pay, someone to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's outrageous cost. Yeah, so one of the other pros is opportunity to meet people from around the world sometimes.
Definitely.
Which, that can be a really great benefit to or a lot of people are interested in that kind of thing. And of course, the flexibility.
So flexibility is probably one of the good ones here, as opposed to residential tenancies, which you're locking in generally long term, and you're playing by a lot of rules.
Yeah.
You're kind of in this eco legal system where you're pretty much there with the tenant all the way through into a fixed lease. Short-term holiday lettings allows you that flexibility because they are short-term arrangements. Tenant comes, tenant goes. There's more flexibility. You can have house rules that you make as well, so you're not following kind of this 120-page legislative environment as you do.
Set down by the state,
Yeah, set down by the state and the government. You make your own house rules, and hopefully your occupants stick to that, abide by them.
Yeah.
So yes, it gives you flexibility, can give you really good returns. Of course, with the right property in the right location, because we've seen it. It doesn't work for every single property.
No. No, I guess, and that helps us lead into the wrap up. So, if we can wrap up just by having each of us give our opinion. So,
I'll go first then.
Yeah.
Sure. All right. If you are looking at getting into Airbnb, rental property as an investment property, one thing I'd probably say is just do a little bit of research and work out whether whether the risk of like wiping out a lot of lenders and only going with a select few, because that's the risk, right? I mean, if you are going down this path, you'll end up with less lenders who will accept your Airbnb income, which then impacts post-settlement, your ability to refinance, go forward with your next purchase, things like that. There's only a small contingent, a number of lenders that you can go with. Do some research if you are wanting to have that income included, but also think about some of the risks, I guess, moving forward, because what happens if those lenders decide not to include that income and you've kind of bought another property and now no lender's offering it? How do you refinance? You might find yourself stuck with the lenders that you have on a variable rate, which could be increasing. Like, there's a lot of things that could happen.
Yeah.
So that's the one takeaway that I'd probably give, just think about the risk, and also, if you really do want it, there are some lenders out there. Do the research.
Yeah. What would be
Good point.
tip?
So my suggestion and advice to investors would be, don't be lured, because short-term letting companies, including Airbnb themselves, are pitching at your wallet.
Yeah.
That's their main pitch, and that is the promise of greater returns, if not double the returns that you're currently getting on normal long-term lettings. You really have to sit down, don't rush it, do the numbers, add all the costs that it's going to factor into running the operation, and of course factor in, well, do I have the actual time and capacity to do it, or will I have to engage a specialist company who will host it for me, keeping in mind that some of the fees are about 4 to 5 times greater than your average property management fee on a long-term letting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay. And so my advice would be that it can be a good strategy if it's considered within a portfolio. But once again, like the other guys have said, you really do need to analyse the property in light of the rest of the market. Personally, it's not something that I would do because I just couldn't. I like the consistency of the income and reliability, and I think the fact that the new legislation is coming in and there'll be the requirement to report will severely impact.
So definitely there's hurdles coming, without a doubt, and that will become the new environment. And you have to sit down and think it through if this is going to really work, because especially for those that are not the owner-occupiers, you will be restricted to the number of days.
And I know we're going really over time here, but that one little warning about how some people are really marketing how you can make money without owning the property.
Yes.
So it's a scenario where you, as a kind of
host.
Yep. You go to a couple of different in property investors and rent their properties out, and then you're the head. You have the head lease.
Yeah, so you're the head. This is basically like another head lease strategy situation where let's say you're the tenant, I'm the landlord, you're the agent, and you rent the property from me as the landlord, and I give you consent to basically allow you to run a short-term stay business out of my premises. You pay me market rent, and your hosting is your prerogative.
And so, people are being sort of drawn into
big profits. Yeah.
Well, no, but people are running this as a training.
Yes.
Thing, so you'll pay, $5,000, $10,000 for the training and the documents, but you are putting yourself at very high risk with these new
rules and regulations.
So you, as the host, could be paying, $1 million per incident or $200 million.
Potentially. Potentially.
But on that happy note, let's wrap up. And so thanks for watching. We'd love your feedback. Please join the Property Mythbusters Facebook group and send us your questions or myths that you would like busted. You can also contact us directly through our social media channels. So I guess that's it for us. Bye.
Thank you, and Merry Christmas to everyone, and Happy New Year. Let's not forget.
Happy New Decade.
Okay.
Yeah.